So we're looking at now a cluster sample. A cluster sample is obtained by selecting all individuals within a randomly selected collection or group of individuals. So for example, you take the population, you divide it into clusters, like here's group 1, here's group 2, group 3, and so on. And then you randomly select clusters and you get everybody in that cluster. All right, so for example, in Tempe, Arizona, all the city blocks are numbered 1 through 947. And then what they do is they get a simple random sample of 19 of those blocks. They just randomly pick 19 blocks and they get every homeowner on each of those blocks polled. Okay, that's a cluster because people are grouped geographically into blocks and you just grab everybody on the blocks. They do it a lot, honestly, for things like a city sample poll, that kind of thing. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a second. Stratified and clusters seemed a lot alike. Yes and no. Stratified, what you're doing is you're breaking them up based on a certain characteristic. So, for example, income or gender or race or ethnicity and that kind of thing. So you break them along that characteristic and you get some members of every single type, right? So for example, if you break along economic backgrounds, you're going to get a few people from low income, a few people from medium income, a few people from high income. You're going to get something from every single group. That's stratified. If you imagine it like a layer cake, it's like cutting a wedge down through the middle of a wedding cake. You get a little bit of each of the layers. A cluster sample basically is, it tends to be, it doesn't always have to be, but it tends to be based on geographical groupings, like city blocks, for example, right? And you get everybody that's in that group together. Or you can do cities, like we're going to poll just a couple townships, but we're not going to poll everybody, that kind of thing. That's a cluster sample. So if you can imagine that when you did this for Tempe, Arizona, it's possible that the 19 blocks you picked were all high and low income, but no medium, for example. Or it's possible you didn't get enough low income groups. You just happened to not pick blocks that had low income. It could happen, right? Whereas in stratified, it could never happen because you're always going to be sure to get some low income people because of the way you broke them up based on their income level. If you imagine a layer cake for cluster, I mean, if stratified's cutting through all the layers of cake, then a cluster sample sort of like saying, think of that multi-tiered wedding cake. I'm just going to take a couple tiers and eat everything in those tiers. Now you'd be sick, I know, but you would have gotten all there was from those particular layers, but the remaining layers you didn't taste at all. So what if the 2 layers you got were chocolate, so you think it's a chocolate cake, but all the other ones were, I don't know, red velvet. You never saw that. You never got any of it. Does that make sense? Which doesn't, I should be clear, I'm not trying to say that cluster is a bad thing. I mean, cluster is actually very appropriate to use in many circumstances. But realize it has some failings, right? As does stratified, to be honest, because stratified is usually more difficult to obtain. All right. Then there's something called the convenience sample. Yes, this is the one where you see people in the mall like, can I ask your opinion about so and so. So, for example, in Tempe, Arizona, the council just sends out a survey to every house, and whoever sends back feedback, that's how they make their decision. It's completely based on their own convenience. Whoever bothered to write it back, so it has very little statistical validity, and yet they are seen everywhere. Every I don't know, poll on Entertainment Tonight or X Factor or American Idol or Teen Idol, whatever. All of that stuff is all Dancing with the Stars. It's all convenience sampling. Okay, let's get down here to the brass tacks. Now, I'm not going to read all of these to you. I'm going to tell you what they are. So pause. Okay, the first one is simple random. They just listed out the telephone numbers and have the computers randomly call. That's simple random. This one is stratified because they've broken up the groups based on age, and then they're getting a little bit from each group. That's stratified. Passing them on the street, that's classic convenience. This is cluster because you're getting every single patient in those cardiac wards. So the clusters are the hospitals, and you're getting all of them. Okay, this is systematic, every 125th car. This is stratified again. They've broken them up by size. This is cluster, getting all the students in the group, right? And then this one is convenience again. All done.